تظاهرات بزرگ در نیویورک، اعتراض به حضور آخوند روحانی در ملل متحد، فراخوان به آزادی 7 گروگان، پیام رئیس جمهور برگزیده مقاومت به تظاهرات نیویورک. مایکل استیل، رئیس حزب جمهوریخواه آمریکا 2009-2011. شهردار رودی جولیانی، سناتور رابرت توریسلی، سفیر جان بولتون، پروفسور کارول فانتین و پاتریک کندی. اعلام همبستگی ریاض الاسد، بنیانگذار ارتش آزادی سوریه، هیئت دولت آزاد سوریه و هیئت کشیشان از بیش از 1000 کلیسا در سراسر ایالات متحده.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want the words to sink in, and I want you to feel these two words: free Iran. A free Iran. It is not a foreign concept. It is not unattainable. Your presence here today, your voice, is a clear example of the present, but even a better example of the future. So I thank you. I thank you for being here. I thank you for sharing in the blood of sacrifice. I thank you for elevating the voice of the voiceless. Americans don't know the full story. Americans don't appreciate the struggle that you struggle with every day. But your voice in this moment, in this hour, can and will make a difference across all lines: political, international, foreign, doesn't matter. Your voice is the voice that needs to be lifted. Do you want a free Iran? Do you want a free Iran? Do you want a free Iran? Then raise your voice loud and clear so all can hear it. Do not let that opportunity pass. Peace, security, liberty. These are the foundation. These words are the foundation for all free people. They evoke the urgency of the fight so many Iranians face every day to provide for their families, to provide for their futures. As the drumbeat of totalitarianism, extremism, and jihad wages around us, boldly, steadfastly, a new voice, a new sound can be heard to emerge across Iran. It began with the 52. It continues with the 7 who are being held captive. But it grows louder and stronger with you. You are that new voice. We first heard those voices in 2009 as a new generation spoke truth to power, and we hear them again today. Peace, security, liberty. Leaders like Roúhani speak the soft words of compromise and negotiation, of acceptance and tolerance, yet their actions kill. Their actions take life. their actions in prison. Your voice will say no more to those actions. Your voice will be the difference in Iran, here in the United States, at the UN. Continue your support for those who struggle. Take the steps to free Iran from a nuclear future. Take the steps to free the people of Iran so they can experience life, liberty, and happiness. Make a difference for them. Courageous Iranians in Iran, the U.S., and throughout the West must be at the forefront of developing a reform-minded strategy that challenges the status quo of repression and regime paranoia, while embracing the perseverance that comes with struggle. You have to embrace this struggle. Otherwise, these lives were lost for nothing. You have to embrace this struggle. Otherwise, these voices will remain silent forever. You have to embrace this struggle because you are the new Iran. You are the new beginning, the voice for the voiceless. And no one knows this better than the MEK, which is on the winning side of history and on the winning side of increasing international support for a democratic Iran. The MEK has demonstrated an exceptional organizational capability and the ability to shape internal dynamics in favor of change, in favor of opportunity, in favor of peace. Changing the regime begins with you. Changing the future begins with you. And that change is long overdue. We, American and Iranian alike, must never give up hope for the establishment of a democratic, secular, non-nuclear Republic of Iran. We stand with you. Americans stand with you to urge the U.S. government to expand America's outreach and support for the Iranian people. Do not leave them alone. Do not leave these voices silent. We stand with you to call on renewed action and give attention to the cause of human rights and democracy in Iran. As we've seen across the Middle East over the past 2 years, autocratic regimes that appear entrenched and invulnerable can collapse with stunning speed. We know that the current government of the Islamic Republic of Iran will eventually end up in the ash heap of history. But that will only happen because of you. That will only happen because of your continued perseverance. And it will happen not because of anything the United States does. It will happen what we do together. It will happen because of the desire of the Iranian people to enjoy the basic freedoms of association, speech, religion, those inalienable rights that are universal to a free people. It is critically important, my friends, for the U.S. to stand clearly and unequivocally on the side of the Iranian people today and support their quest for freedom. Do not shake the hand of Rohani. You undermine that freedom when you do. Western policy should reorient itself in order to stand with the people of Iran as they strive for democratic change. Let's ensure that the world sees the rising tide of faces for freedom, hears the new drumbeat of voices for opportunity, and feels the power of the people of a free and democratic Iran standing proud, strong, and united in peace, security, and liberty. Never give up, my friends. You are not alone. Free Iran. Thank you. God bless.
Today, we mark this
important day, and we begin by paying honor to these new 52 martyrs. And the way we pay honor to them is not with a moment of silence, because silence is our enemy. Today, we break that silence by standing up right now and raising our voice and applauding the lives and the sacrifice of these brave martyrs. Martyrs were killed because they wanted their country of Iran to finally be free of the mullahs. These martyrs were killed because they wanted equal rights for women in Iran. These martyrs were murdered because they dared to dream of an Iran that had a democracy, not a theocracy. Today, we stand with not a cloud in the sky, and the sun is shining, and it is bright, and it is clear. So let us make today a day where there are no more lies about what is going on in Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty. Today, we shine the light on the lies of the mullahs in Tehran. Today, we give voice to those who stand up for freedom. And today, we say, enough is enough of any more people dying for freedom, for a free Iran. Today to bring the light of day on the fact that these were preventable deaths, to bring the light of day on the fact that now there are 113 martyrs, people who were killed under the protection of the United Nations and the United States. In July of 2009, there were 13 martyrs who were killed under the protection of the United States and the United Nations. On April 2011,
there were 38 martyrs killed under the protection of the United States and the United Nations. Missile attacks on February 2013 and June 2013 killed another 10 martyrs. And on September 1st, 52 more martyrs were killed on the cause of freedom because they were a threat to President Rouhani and his ability to continue to his theocracy in Tehran and his brutal dictatorship that is imposing itself on the people of Iran. That must stop, and today we salute the martyrs for bringing us closer to the truth that Iran cannot be believed if we listen to its leadership, because its leadership are nothing but a bunch of elite mullahs who do not represent the people of Iran. The people of Iran are represented here. The people of Iran are represented everywhere in the world where the diaspora has a voice. To that United Nations behind me. Rouhani is a war criminal who is walking in the United Nations, and as he does so, he is shaming the United Nations, whose mission was to stand up for refugees, to stand up for human rights, and instead, people today are going to applaud Rouhani, who is the leader of the largest state-sponsored terrorist country in the world, murdering millions of people throughout the world, murdering his own people in Iran, and murdering the people of Syria because of his policies. And he is walking a free man in the United Nations, making a mockery of the fact that he does not stand up for human rights, and nor does he represent human rights, which the United Nations represents. He ought to be thrown out of the United Nations today. So I salute you today, and we need to salute these 52 martyrs because they represented a threat to Rouhani, and that is the reason today they are martyrs, because they believed in a new Iran where the people of Iran chose their leaders, not the tyrannical mullahs choosing Rouhani, who is their puppet. Let us understand that these martyrs of Camp Ashraf represent the true free future of Iran in the way they lived, in the way they died, because they lived lives of integrity, fighting and standing up for freedom, fighting and standing up for their fellow Iranians who have died at the hands of this brutal dictatorship in Tehran. So today, let's begin. Once again, by applauding these martyrs so that we can end the silence of their death and bring them and their memories to life here today in the light of the day. Let's clap for the martyrs. Thank you. And thank you for making noise in the silence so that the world knows that we will not let these martyrs die in vain, that they died for a cause that still lives, and that cause is stronger than ever before. So when the mullahs think that they can kill the dream of freedom by killing these martyrs, are they wrong or what? Of course they're wrong, because they will know that the people of Iran will never forget these martyrs, and the people of Iran will stand up and one day voice their own leadership in a democracy. That is why we are here today. So we're breaking the silence, because the silence is what killed these martyrs. It was the silence of the United States that did nothing after warning after warning after warning, after people were killed over and over again in 2009, in 2011, in 2013. We warned the world community that this would happen, and the world community and the United States was silent. So thank you today for helping us break the silence that is resulting in these deaths. And why do we need to make noise? Because there are 3,100 more refugees in Camp Liberty that need to be protected. They need to be protected. So the United States promised to protect these refugees, and the United States has broken its promise, to these 52 martyrs and the 113 that died under the United States protection. Like the rest before them, they were buried with their identity card saying they were protected persons under the United Nations and the United States. What a shame on the United States. What a shame on the United Nations that we have not protected these refugees whose only crime is that they want to free Iran, whose only crime is that they want to say enough of it is enough to the torture and imprisonment of hundreds of thousands of their fellow Iranians. That is their crime. And instead of standing with them, we abandoned them. And we're here today to say we're no longer going to abandon these refugees, are we? We're going to make noise today and say to the United Nations and say to the United States that we expect them to live up to their word, to protect free peoples, to stand up for human rights, to stand up against terrorism. Instead of listening to the largest state sponsor of terrorism, President Rohani and his mullahs, that are waging war not only against his own people, but against the free people of Syria. That is who we're talking about today. And who better to address this subject of freedom in this great city, which marks the place of the United Nations, but marks the place of a historic attack on our freedom on 9/11, when he was mayor of this city. Let us give a great round of applause to Mayor Rudy Giuliani.
First of all, my deepest condolences and my prayers for all of the families who lost such wonderful people on September 1st and in the past. Our prayers are with you, our thoughts are with you, and we do this in dedication to you. As we watch the world media and many of our own political leaders fall under the spell of the mullahs once again, as Rouhani speaks of moderation, let us not, in our desire for a peaceful solution, wake up and find ourselves with a nuclear-armed Iranian regime, because that's where we're headed right now. I fear we're approaching all of this poised to make the same mistakes we made all over again. Red lines that are drawn and then ignored. Red lines that are ignored without considering the damage it does to our credibility as a country. To avoid that, let's start to face reality by raising some questions that other people seem to be afraid to raise. As we meet here in front of the United Nations, there are 7 brave Iranian patriots, 6 women and 1 man, who are being held hostage in Iraq right now to be shipped to Iran, where they're going to be placed on trial, and you know what the outcome of that trial will be. This follows the September 1 slaughter, the savage attack on Camp Ashraf, where 52 people were killed by Iraqi forces with the complicity of Iran. If anybody has any doubt who's responsible for that attack, for that slaughter, people shot with handcuffs on, people shot with their hands tied behind their backs, bodies lying on the floor of a hospital room, shot in an emergency room, a woman with a hole in her head, obviously the victim of a coup de grace, and another woman shot holding her card showing she was a protected person, protected by my country, by our country, the United States of America. Each and every one of these 52 people and the 7 hostages have been promised protection by the United States and the United Nations. And in each case so far, the UN and the U.S. have turned their backs on murder. This must stop. These promises These promises of protection were made first by our military, by our State Department, and just last year by our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. All of these people were promised the protection of the United States of America. And I fear that it's now become inconvenient to live up to our promises because it will interfere with an agenda of negotiation at all costs. You know what an agenda of negotiation at all costs is called? It's called appeasement. It's called surrender. And I fear that these murders, these killings, are not coincidental. The last time the Iranian regime tried to fool us about their nuclear ambitions, who revealed their lying? Who exposed their concealment? Who brought to the world's attention that while Rouhani was negotiating in the past, the Iranian regime was just moving forward with enrichment and with becoming a nuclear power? Who revealed that? The MEK revealed that. Well, what better way is there? What better way is there to make sure that you shut down the information coming out of Iran if you are preparing for another attempt at fooling us than this kind of brutal slaughter? Killing 52 people on September 1st as you're getting ready for these so-called negotiations to make sure that people understand what will happen to them if they should give information about the Iranian regime's lying. What better way than to take 7 hostages and bring them back to Iran and put them on trial and hang them in public? Just think of what this will do to the people that are considering giving information. This is being done to shut down information coming out of Iran as Iran prepares once again to pull the wool over our eyes, to fool us. And when we examine all of the evidence, it's clear, just like the prior attacks, that these innocent people who were under U.S. and UN protection were slaughtered by Maliki's Iraqi forces at the behest of Iran. It's time for the United States to stand up and to take action before we engage in any kind of negotiations with these cold-blooded murderers. If we're going to approach these negotiations with maturity and realism, we must recognize that the Iranian regime has taken us down this road before, and they fooled us before. And if we let them fool us again, then we are fools. They negotiated with the United States and the West on the surface. And Rouhani has written and admitted that this was a complete hoax. While they were negotiating with us on the surface, they were enriching uranium in secret. This is what they may very well be preparing to do again. And the reason they're engaging in these killings today is to deter people from allowing this truth to come to light. The MEK poses a grave risk to destroying their plan. Anyone that thinks the MEK is not a threat to the regime in Iran just has to look at what Iran has done to the MEK. The people that have been killed, the people that have been slaughtered, the threats that have been issued. So why do I think that the September 1 slaughter wasn't an accident? or the taking of the 7 hostages isn't an accident. This is like a mafia execution. Kill people in order to silence other people. And we should not allow it. The world should not allow it. The UN should not allow it. And certainly the United States should not allow it. As Rohani smiles and speaks the words of moderation, let's lift the veil. Rohani has been a supporter of this homicidal regime from the very beginning. In 1994, Rohani was the secretary of the Supreme National Council of Iran when Iran masterminded the murder and the bombing of people at the Jewish Cultural Center in Buenos Aires. 58 innocent people killed because they were Jewish. With Rohani sitting at the top, certainly aware of it, certainly involved in it. Their blood is on their hands. And just wishing people a happy Rosh Hashanah doesn't wipe away the blood of these Jewish martyrs that are on the hands of Rohani. And he was secretary of the Supreme National Council when Iran engineered the attack on Khobar Towers in 1996, killing 19 United States servicemen. The blood of those American servicemen is on the hands of Rohani. Smiling doesn't wipe away the blood of our innocent, decent servicemen slaughtered by Rohani. Before the President of the United States, the President of the United States should remember, before he considers shaking hands with this man, how much blood is on his hands. American servicemen, innocent men and women, students, and people killed just because they're Jewish. We must require a lot more of Rohani before we even think about negotiating with him than just his smiling at us and telling us he's a moderate. And our failure to raise the murder of the 52 innocent people on September 1st, and our failure to protest the 7 hostages that are being held right now in Iraq, and our unwillingness to rescue the several thousand people of your people, decent people, our failure to rescue them, says to me that we may very well not be headed for negotiation, but for appeasement, to make certain that we're not fooled again, to make certain that under the guise of negotiating, we're not appeasing these murderers. There are steps that have to be taken right now. First, we must demand that Rohani publicly call on Iraq and Maliki to release all 7 people that are right now being held hostage. Release them immediately. No meetings, no talks, no handshakes, no help, no assistance, no smiles until they are released. Second, the United States of America should fulfill its promise and live up to its word, and it should immediately send airplanes to Iraq and bring back all the people that are at Camp Liberty so that they don't become victims like the 52 who died on September 1st. We owe them that. It is our obligation. We gave our word. Instead of worrying so much about not offending our enemies, how about we try loyalty to our friends? How about we try keeping our word? Third, a special tribunal should be convened immediately, and it should commence an investigation and indict for crimes against humanity the Iraqis and their Iranian conspirators who were responsible for the September 11 atrocities and the earlier attacks on the people at Camp Liberty and Camp Ashraf. This should not go unnoticed. We should not turn our back on this. Justice requires that these people be brought to trial, that these people be brought to account for these atrocities against humanity that are so far being ignored. And finally, fourth, only after the hostages are released, the remaining people removed, and the investigation of atrocities commenced, then and only then should the U.S. engage in a process with Iran. But it should go like this. Before we say anything, do anything, or relax any sanctions, Rouhani should supply us with a complete description of all nuclear sites. Inspection should begin, and inspection should go on for a number of months so that we assure ourselves that there is going to be real inspections, not the kind of interrupted inspections we had before. And only then, only after having a complete list of all nuclear facilities, a history of inspections, real evidence that they are moving in the other direction and moving away from becoming a nuclear power, then and only then should we begin negotiating with them. Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. But those were different times and different people. Here, I believe what we should say is verify first, then verify again, then verify a third time, and then begin a process of actually engaging in deconstructing your nuclear facilities. And then and only then will we negotiate, and we will never trust cold-blooded murderers unless we are fools. No trust. A word to the people listening at Camp Liberty. A word to the people listening at Camp Liberty. Your sacrifice for freedom and liberty is admired by all of us who prize freedom and are mature enough to realize that the price of freedom falls, unfortunately, on a few who have to make that sacrifice. Freedom comes at a very high price, and unfortunately, the people at Liberty are paying that price. But don't lose hope. Your cause is just, your courage exemplary, your principles admirable. As the history of your great nation, Persia, is written, your sacrifices, your courage, your ideals will prevail over these cold-blooded murderers who have hijacked your nation and have filled it with blood. This will end, and you will be the heroes. You will be the people standing up for freedom and decency. My admiration for you is immense, and my appreciation for all you have done is endless. You are all heroes. Bless you. It is my great honor to introduce to you someone who you love and who you know and has led you through some of the most difficult times. We have all gotten to know her so well. We admire her courage, her principles, her tremendous love and empathy for her people, the way she suffers with them and the way she works for them, and the way in which she has taken this movement and brought it to world attention so that now the people of the world can hear what you're doing and what you can accomplish. It has to completely mystify the regime in Iran that your movement is led by a woman, and a great woman, and a great person. It is my honor to introduce Madam Rajavi.
Compatriots, friends and sympathizers of the resistance, I salute you all. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to members of the Senate and House of Representatives, distinguished American personalities, as well as all my compatriots for their solidarity after the massacre of 52 Ashrafis. Your gathering today is an outcry to ask, why are the UN and US hosting a mullah who participated in the decision-making for the massacre of the Ashrafis? A mullah who since becoming president, more than 160 have been executed in Iran. He has intensified the suppression of women by forced veiling and has supported the Pasdaran and Mullah's regimes meddling in Syria at a time that its cooperation with Syria's dictatorship in the massacre of innocent people by using chemical weapons has provoked an international outrage. Rohani's conduct has proved that there is no change. Unfortunately, the US government has adopted a policy which has failed in the past 3 decades. We warn them that do not pay the price of fruitless appeasement and deals with mullahs by the lives of the best children of the Iranian people. I would like to particularly highlight the importance and priority of freeing the 7 Ashrafi hostages. We do not have much time. According to recent information, they are being kept in a prison by special forces of the Iraqi Prime Minister. Nouri Maliki's government is trying to deny any knowledge of their condition in order to pave the way for their extradition to Iran. The US government and President Obama have responsibility for the safety of the 7 hostages. I forewarn, the fate of these hostages will pave the way for other catastrophes. I call on President Obama and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to act on their responsibility and break their silence and use their influence in Iraq to take vital and urgent measures in order to: first, immediately release the hostages. Second, station a UN monitoring team and UN blue helmets in Liberty round the clock. Third, immediately install 17,500 T-walls in Liberty and transfer other necessary security equipments. Fourth, the UNHCR declare all members of PMOI in Liberty as political refugees. Fifth, right to ownership of residents on their movable and immovable assets in Ashraf and the right to sell them must be guaranteed. Sixth, the UN Secretary General must put at the UN agenda an independent investigation about the massacre of Ashraf in a defined time frame. Thank you again, and God bless you all. هموطنان عزیز، یاران مقاومت، برادران و خواهران عزیزی که از حماسه شهادت 52 قهرمان مجاهد خلق 100 بار بیشتر برانگیخته شده و برای سرنگونی رژیم ولایت فقیه سوگند خورده اید. هموطنانی که برای ابراز انزجار و خشم مردم ایران از حضور سردمداران فاشیسم مذهبی در سازمان ملل در آنجا گرد آمده اید و شخصیت‌های دوست و حامی مقاومت ایران، به گرد همایی بزرگ شما امروز درود می‌فرستم. اجتماع شما صدا و خروش مردم ایران برای آزادی است که اختناق و توحش ولایت فقیه مانع شنیدن آن می‌شود. گرد همایی شما صدای پایداری دلیرانه مجاهدان آزادی است که جهانی را به تحسین واداشته است. از لیبرتی تا زندانهای سیاسی در سراسر ایران، از قلب شهرها و روستاهای ایران تا تحصنها و اعتصابها و اجتماعات اعتراضی شما در اروپا، استرالیا و کانادا. اکنون صدای واحدی از همه اینجاها به گوش جهان میرسد. این صدای مردم ایران است که میگویند رژیم ولایت فقیه دیگر نباید ادامه پیدا کند و ما این رژیم را با همه جناح‌ها و باندهایش سرنگون می‌کنیم و چنین خواهد شد. این اسباب ننگ و شرمساری ملل متحد است که رئیس جمهور یک دیکتاتوری ضد بشری را در اجلاس مجمع عمومی میپذیرد. رژیمی که 120,000 تن از فرزندان مردم ایران را اعدام کرده، 10 بار مرتکب جنایت علیه بشریت و نسل کشی شده و همکنون جنگ و قتل عام‌های روزانه در سوریه را هدایت می‌کند. چرا ملل متحد جای نگاهبانی از حقوق بشر با پذیرش بدترین و بیرحمترین آدمکشان جهان امروز حقوق بشر را به تمسخر می‌گیرد؟ چرا دولت آمریکا درهای کشور خود را به روی آخوندی باز کرده که رئیس جمهور مهمترین منشأ و حامی تروریسم در جهان امروز است؟ آخوندی که در تمام 3 دهه گذشته در کانون اغلب تصمیم گیری ها در مورد سرکوب مردم ایران، از جمله قتل عام 30,000 زندانی سیاسی در سال 67، کشتار دانشجویان، عملیات تروریستی در خارج کشور و قتل عام اخیر اشرف بوده است. دولت کنونی آمریکا سیاست خود بر سر مسئله ایران را حدود 5 سال پیش با دراز کردن دست خود به سوی ولی فقیه ارتجاع آغاز کرد. اما پاسخ رژیم ایران گسترش سلطه‌جویی و بنیادگرایی در منطقه و تشدید تروریسم در سراسر جهان بود، به طوری که حتی در قلب واشنگتن هم قصد داشت سفیر عربستان را ترور کند. با این حال دولت آمریکا باز هم سیاست 10 بار شکست خورده خود را با نامه‌نگاری با رئیس جمهور جدید ارتجاع و استقبال از ژست های میانتوهی او از سر گرفته است. بعد از انتخابات نمایشی خرداد گذشته گفتم بدون برقراری آزادی ها و تامین حقوق بشر و تا وقتی که سیاست تجاوزکارانه رژیم در سوریه و عراق و برنامه ساخت بمب اتمی ادامه دارد، هیچ چیز عوض نمی شود. حالا پس از گذشت 2 ماه می‌بینیم که به دار آویختن جوانان بی‌وقف ادامه دارد. سرکوب و دستگیری زنان و جوانان به جرم بدحجابی گسترش یافته و رئیس جمهور رژیم از دخالت و سلطه‌جویی رژیم در سوریه و از برنامه اتمی و از سپاه پاسداران ارتجاع قویاً دفاع می‌کند و در مقابل خواست عمومی برای آزادی زندانیان سیاسی به نمایشی با آزادی شمار معدودی از زندانیان دست می‌زند. حالا دولت آمریکا به همین فریبکاری ها چشم دوخته و آزادی، مقاومت و حقوق بشر ایران را نادیده میگیرد. وقتی از جانب آخوندها نه فقط میانه روی بلکه حتی تظاهر به آن هم در میان نیست، این همه مجیز گفتن نسبت به آن فضیحت‌بار است، چرا که این دیگر از سیاست‌ها و روش‌های همیشگی مماشات نیز فراتر رفته است. این یک مردم فریبی برای فرار از پرداخت بهای یک سیاست صحیح نسبت به فاشیسم دینی حاکم بر ایران است. اما در دنیای واقعیت‌های سرسخت با خودفریبی و مردم فریبی و بازی‌های سخیف هیچ سیاستی پیش نمی رود و فرجامی جز ضربه زدن به صلح و امنیت جهان نخواهد داشت. ما به آنها میگوییم اگر می توانید آخوندها را وادار سازید که بر سر برنامه اتمیشان یک قدم به عقب بنشینند، درنگ نکنید. اما سیاست چشم بستن بر جنایت‌های این رژیم و دولت دست نشانده‌اش در عراق پذیرفته نیست. مصالح مردم ایران را در پی سراب مذاکره قربانی نکنید. یاران مقاومت، 23 روز است که در لیبرتی و در مهمترین شهرهای اروپا و آمریکا و کانادا و استرالیا اعتصاب غذا و تحصن و اعتراض نسبت به ربوده شدن 7 تن از مجاهدین ادامه دارد و بسیاری را در سراسر جهان تحت تاثیر خود قرار داده است. سازمان ملل و ایالات متحده در این سالها به کرات تعهدات خود نسبت به حفاظت و امنیت مجاهدین را نقض کردند. آنها حالا هم به نحو رسوایی نقش یک تماشاچی ساکت را بازی می کنند. اما برای آدمربایان و اربابان آنها در بغداد و تهران هیچ هدیه‌ای بهتر از این سکوت وجود ندارد. وقتی که هر دو دیکتاتوری در بغداد و تهران از پذیرش مسئولیت این آدمربایی تفره رفته‌اند، سکوت آمریکا و سازمان ملل در حکم انکار آن است. آقایان، به این موضع شرم‌آور بیش از این ادامه ندهید. مطمئن باشید که تمام جزئیات پشت پرده برملا می شود و طرف‌هایی که امروز عمدن بر این جنایت چشم بسته‌اند سرافکنده خواهند شد. من مؤکداً از ایالات متحده می خواهم که دولت عراق را وادار به آزادی گروگانها کند. امروز آخوندها در تنگنای بحران سرنگونی رژیمشان وحشت زده اند و این موقعیت ناامن و آسیب پذیر کمپ لیبرتی را به مراتب افزایش می‌دهد. به خصوص که پس از قتل عام اشرف، مالکی و خامنه‌ای تمرکز دسیسه‌ها و جنایت‌های خود را متوجه لیبرتی کردند و از میان بردن مجاهدین را لازمه فرار خود از بحران سرنگونی یافتند. بر این اساس جامعه جهانی به ویژه ملل متحد و دولت آمریکا را فرا می‌خوانیم که تا خروج کامل مجاهدان از عراق، از نفوذ خود در عراق برای استقرار تیم مانیتورینگ ملل متحد و نیروهای کلاه‌آبی در لیبرتی و تأمین الزام‌های حفاظتی این کمپ استفاده کنند. هم میهنان، حماسه 10 شهریور و خونهای پاک و جوشان 52 قهرمان اشرفی برای تمام اعضای این مقاومت پیام درخشانی در بر دارد. این پیام استواری، قطعیت و یقین در سرنگونی رژیم ولایت فقیه و کسب آزادی و دموکراسی است. همه شما را فرا می‌خوانم که برای ادامه راه پر افتخار 52 قهرمان کهکشان اشرف به پا خیزید. شما را فرا می‌خوانم که برای گسترش این پیکار پرچم خونین کهکشان اشرف را به دست بگیرید و با عزم و ایمانی 100 برابر به پا خیزید. سلام بر آزادی، سلام بر مجاهدان آزادی، سلام بر مردم ایران و درود بر همه شما.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you. People of liberty, if you can hear our voices, understand this. We may be in New York. We may be 5,000 miles away. But today, every man, woman, and child in this plaza today is proud to say, we are citizens of Camp Liberty. We stand with you. Camp Liberty, you may be on the front lines, but you are not alone, and you will never be forgotten. When the history of a free Iran is written, it will be said that there was a time of darkness, despair, and death when 3,100 proud Iranians in the great tradition of Persia stood strong, stood free, never gave in, never gave up, and a free Iran was built on their shoulders. To them we give our honor. Now, friends, I know that Rouhani fears our voices. I know he fears our presence. I know he fears the freedom that we want for his people. But here's what he needs to hear across this street. Are you afraid of his thugs or his jails or his torture? Do you fear Rouhani? Do you swear that you will come to this plaza every year, every time, until the last man, woman, and child of Iran breathes free? Are you committed for life? Well, so am I. And I'm committed to something else. You see, as the years pass, we're all getting a little older. I understand how many years have passed me by. But there are some things I remember. Some things about America. I remember an America that wouldn't stand or sit or talk to terrorists. I love that America. Not that. About America and all the things that I love about our country. And I think to myself, as President Obama needs to remind himself today, would Franklin Roosevelt meet with a nation that was enslaving its people? Would Ronald Reagan meet with a Rouhani that was lying to America and developing atomic weapons? Would Bill Clinton meet with a president who just participated in murdering 52 of his own people in a refugee camp? I understand that America, the America of Roosevelt and Kennedy, of Clinton and of Reagan. I do not understand and I do not accept an American president meeting with the leader of the greatest terrorist government on the face of the earth, who's lied to America, deceived America, enslaved his own people, killed thousands of people, brings terrorism around the world. I don't understand that America. Shake his hand. But after you wipe the blood from your own hand, tell him this. You may talk to them. You may compromise with them. But the people of Iran, peace-loving, freedom-loving people of the world, will never compromise, will never give in, will never go away. We demand a free Iran. Eastern Europe, and we fought for it. We've demanded freedom in Latin America, and we fought for it. We've demanded freedom for people all around the world, and so I ask this, as we meet with Rohani today, why do the people of Iran deserve less than the other peoples of the globe? Why is freedom not good enough for the people of Iran? Why are the rights of the people of Iran any less important than those of Europe or Africa or Latin America? President Obama, we demand what everyone else demands, what America has demanded all around the globe. The freedom of the people of Iran is no less important, and it will not be compromised, and it will not be traded away. Of our own government, America, as you always have been, for all the reasons that we admire this government and respect this country. America, get on the right side of history. There is no compromising with evil. You do not belong in a room with Rohani. President Obama, do not demean your office or the integrity or the history of this country. Do not meet with terrorists. Stand firm, stand strong, and do not give in. Not now, not ever. Understand. This is the mathematics of our struggle. Indeed, the struggles of all free people through history. Every tyrant believes that they can defeat the thirst for freedom. Every tyrant believes that brutality and torture and jails can bring security. But that's not the history of man. Rohani, understand this. Every one of us you kill, every innocent refugee, every defenseless man, woman, child that you murder or torture, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 will join our ranks to take their place. And for every one that you jail, for every one that you deny freedom, 10,000 more will raise their voices. I know you think in murdering 52 people in Astrov that you will break our backs. You have not broken our backs, you have stiffened our spine. with every hostage that is taken into custody. He believes that he weakens our will. It is not so. Every offense against liberty, every death at Ashraf, every person in Tehran who is tortured or imprisoned, our ranks swell, our confidence grows, our determination is emboldened. We're not going away. You're not breaking our will. If we're 5,000 here today, next year we'll be 10. If there are people in the streets of Tehran today demanding freedom, there'll be twice as many next year. My friends, understand this. I know you can get discouraged when you see the blood run the streets of Liberty or Ashraf. I know you can get discouraged when you see world leaders kowtowing to a terrorist government. That is not the milestone of history. The milestone of history is with the people. People on the streets. People on the front lines. Believe me when I tell you, we may not know when victory comes. We may not know when the mullahs fall. We may not be able to see the day. But as certain as you live and breathe here today, the one thing I can guarantee you, the inevitability of human victory, the inevitability of freedom. History is on our side. Freedom is inevitable. A democracy in Iran, the democracy shared by people around the world, is inevitable. It is coming. You are part of it. And generations of Iranians will say your name. I tell you this, one day, across Iran, grandparents will bring children on their knees, and they will say, there was a time when we, the few, stood up against the many. We, the weak, stood up against the mullahs and all their guns and all their torture. And we, my grandson and my grandchild, we won the inevitable victory. You will live to see a free Iran. God bless you. Thank you for your struggle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, it's a great honor to be here today, but a very sad occasion, given the massacre that we've seen at Ashraf and Liberty, given the hostages that have been taken by the al-Maliki regime, given the repression that the regime in Tehran has been practicing. You would think after a certain amount of time people would understand the nature of the mullahs and their objectives. But time and time again, they get away with charm offensives that the American media, the Western media more broadly, succumb to without even thinking about it. This is as tragic a circumstance as I can imagine under which we gather. So it's all the more important to continue to make the point that the regime itself is the problem. It's not a few actors who are going beyond their instructions or their mandate. It is the regime itself. And it is why I have long believed, unfortunately contrary to what President Obama said at the United Nations this morning, but why American policy with respect to Iran has to be regime change in Tehran. Has to be regime change. This does not mean that the United States itself has to be actively involved. It's the people of Iran that want regime change. The regime is unpopular. It stays in power because of its military capabilities. Everybody has seen that. We saw it in the summer of 2009. We saw it at Ashraf and Liberty, unfortunately, just in the past weeks. So it's critically important to continue to explain to all who will listen that this regime is an authoritarian regime and it's a terrorist regime. The United States State Department has had the Ayatollahs on the list of state sponsors of terrorism for decades, and it's on the list today. Now, it may be that Hassan Rouhani hasn't personally detonated any explosives or pulled the trigger against innocent people recently. But the regime of which he is now a senior official has been doing it for decades. And without that material support, financial support, weapons, the terrorists couldn't conduct their terrorist operations. The regime that supplies terrorists with the weapons of their trade is functionally the equivalent of a terrorist as well. And that's why the notion that a president of the United States would shake hands with a terrorist at the United Nations is repugnant to the overwhelming majority of American citizens, the overwhelming majority of the citizens of Iran. We are in the middle right now of a Hassan Rouhani charm offensive. He has a Twitter account, as if that makes him any less of a terrorist supporter. He's going to do things that make the American media roll over like scratching a cat's tummy. There's no doubt he'll get good publicity for his speech today. But the fact is, Rouhani is a fraud. He knows what he is doing is trying to get relief from the economic sanctions, to relieve pressure on the regime inside Iran. Of course Rouhani wants relief from the sanctions. It's only sensible. But he's not going to make a single concession on the nuclear weapons program. And the critical point to understand here for the American and Western media is that the nuclear weapons in the hands of the Ayatollahs are not simply a threat to the United States, to Israel, to Arab states across the Persian Gulf, to the Middle East as a whole, to the whole world. Nuclear weapons in the hands of the Ayatollahs are a threat to the people of Iran because they constitute the single most important evidence of power to keep the regime in Tehran controlling the country. Once the mullahs get nuclear weapons, it becomes a lot harder for the rest of the world and the people of Iran to dislodge them. So when we talk about the threat of nuclear weapons, it's not simply the external use of nuclear weapons that should concern us, but the impact it will have inside Iran by solidifying the regime in power and making it that much harder to overthrow. And nobody knows this better than Hassan Rouhani. 10 years ago, almost exactly, beginning in 2003, he was Iran's chief nuclear negotiator. And he was extraordinarily successful in his diplomacy, persuading the EU3, Britain, France, and Germany, to negotiate at length about eliminating the nuclear weapons program. Rouhani made what seemed to be concessions, suspensions of the uranium enrichment program, but they were suspensions that were going to occur anyway because the regime had technical and scientific difficulties with uranium conversion and uranium enrichment. So the suspensions were in effect involuntary, but Rouhani was able to extract political and economic concessions from the Europeans. And he got something that he couldn't have obtained any other way. He got time for the regime to fix the problems, to overcome the difficulties, and to continue to make progress. And he gained legitimacy for the Ayatollahs by appearing to engage in a peaceful process of negotiation. Rouhani knows that playbook. He wrote the playbook, and he's got the playbook out again today. And he's simply turning the same pages. So if we see the Perm 5+1 enter into negotiations with the regime again, we will simply enter another likely protracted period where the regime is protected against outside interference, because the White House and the Europeans will not do anything to overthrow the regime while the negotiations are in process. And it will impede the prospects of the people of Iran, the people who are suffering under the mullahs, to carry out their own operations. This, too, Hassan Rouhani knows. At the same time that Rouhani and the Ayatollahs have been supporting the Assad regime in Syria and its use of chemical weapons. Never forget, the Ayatollahs have chemical weapons of their own in Tehran. They have biological weapons. They have unleashed conventional forces against the people of Iran, and if pressed, I don't doubt that they'd resort to chemical weapons as well. This is a dangerous regime in Tehran. It's dangerous to the people of their own country, dangerous to the people of Ashraf and Liberty. They work with the full cooperation of the al-Maliki regime in Iraq, and they're pursuing an objective that the White House simply doesn't want to talk about. I think we should not be considering reducing sanctions against the regime. We should be increasing them. And while we're at it, we should be imposing sanctions on the al-Maliki regime in Iraq, suspending American aid until they do the right thing with Camp Liberty. Entering a very, very dangerous period. A dangerous period for the United States, for the people of the Middle East, and particularly for the people of Iran. But while it may appear discouraging, never forget that as long as the spirit of freedom exists in this country, in Iran, and around the world, ultimately the Ayatollahs will never prevail. And it's important to keep your voices raised to say we will not stop until the regime in Tehran is overthrown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear friends. You know times are grim when you bring a Bible scholar to speak about the brave hearts of Iran. But those of us who study ancient scripture know a thing or two about innocent blood. They may be laughing in Baghdad and chuckling in Tehran, but I tell you, friends, the last laugh will be yours. It does not matter how many innocent people they slaughter. The hope and the determination of the people of Iran, as expressed in the messages of Maryam Rajavi and the courage of the PMOI, cannot be extinguished by little men. Instead, from every drop of blood shed, we will see 1,000 arise who will cry out for freedom just as deeply, just as fervently. I also have a message for our State Department. It comes from the Bible. Two of them, two messages. The first is from the Torah, and it says, "You shall not go about your people as a slanderer, and you shall not stand idly by while your neighbor bleeds." The State Department has done nothing but slander the PMOI for over a decade and longer, and now says because they have not done an investigation, there can be no evidence of what actually happened on the massacre of September 1st. This is unacceptable. Secondly, Jesus, who knew a thing or two about innocent blood, once said to his followers, "Beware of the religious professionals who love to walk up and down in their long robes, but turn their hearts away from the poor." I submit to you that we in the United States are being played by the current leadership in Iran that simply seeks to run out the clock while we do nothing, while we fall for smiles and handshakes that mean precisely nothing, when 1 million children go to bed hungry on the streets of Tehran every night. This is what the mullahs have produced for their people. This is why the people of Iran say no. This is why the PMI does not give up its fight, ever. I would not be a good student of Mrs. Rajavi's, who said no one has the right to give up hope. No one, not one of us, has the right to give up hope. If I did not come to you with a poem, because as we know, every Persian has written at least one poem, at least one time in their life. This is for the dead of Ashraf. Oh, Ashraf, your blood is ever before us. It blooms like flowers in every heart. Oh, Ashraf, your gates are closed to those watching, but we are never far apart. Oh, Ashraf, your lovers each tell your story in every great city, by every art. Oh, Ashraf, our prayers like fences surround you. Your courage is not your end, but our start. Oh, Ashraf, your friends shall never desert you, no matter the challenge, no matter how dark. People of liberty, people of Ashraf, around the world, we are now all Ashrafi now. We do not forget, we do not surrender, and we will continue our struggle until we see freedom and human rights come home to Iran and Iraq. God bless you all.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أيها الأحرار، أيتها الحرائر، واليوم نتحدث إليكم من على أبواب الأمم المتحدة لنؤكد على أخوة الشعوب وحقها بالحياة وإصرارنا على الحرية والتحرر والعيش بكرامة وأمان، كما نص ميثاق الأمم المتحدة والأعراف والقوانين الدولية التي خرقها النظام الأسدي ابتداء من الاعتداء على شعبنا السوري وقصف المدنيين بالصواريخ والطائرات والأسلحة الكيماوية المحرمة دوليا، والتي راح ضحيتها ما يقارب 1700 شهيد سوري، معظمهم من الأطفال في آخر المجازر الكيماوية في الغوطة. إننا كسوريون نحترم الشعب الأمريكي ولا نكن له إلا الحب والاحترام، ولكننا نتوجه لكم اليوم لتضغطوا على حكومتكم ورئاستكم بتغيير سياستها حيال الشعوب المضطهدة، وأن تكف عن استخدام دماء الأبرياء من المدنيين خدمة لأجدادها وحلفائها الاستراتيجيين، وأن لا تعيد الكرة كما فعلت بالعراق الشقيق. أما الرئيس باراك أوباما فلتكف عن العبث بمصائر شعوب العالم عامة والشعب السوري خاصة، ولتتوقف عن التعامل بازدواجية المعايير خدمة لمصالحك ومصالح حلفائك. نوجه نداءنا من أمام الأمم المتحدة للشعب الإيراني بالانتفاض على هذه الطغمة الحاكمة في إيران، والتي تمتص قوت الشعب الفارسي لتمول حروبا لها على شعوب المنطقة والجوار، وتستعدي لأبنائكم وأحفادكم الشعوب العربية والإسلامية وأحرار العالم المؤمنون بالحرية وحقوق الإنسان والسلم العالمي. وإلى الرئيس الإيراني، فنحذرك من الاستمرار في احتلال وطننا سوريا، ونحملك مسؤولية كل روح أزهقت في سوريا وكل انتهاك لحقوق الإنسان، وسنتوجه لمحكمة الجنايات الدولية لمقاضاتك وحسن نصر الله والمجرم بشار الأسد بتهمة ارتكاب جرائم حرب وممارسة الإرهاب ضد شعبنا السوري وشعوب المنطقة، فالجرائم والفظائع التي نفذتموها في سوريا ولن يغفر الشعب السوري لقتلته، وستدفع الثمن غاليا عاجلا أم آجلا أنت وزبانية حكمك. ومن على أبواب الأمم المتحدة نتوجه لهذا الصرح الدولي ومن باب موقعها ومكانتها العالميين أن تطلع بمهامها الإنسانية والأمنية، وأن تعاقب إيران وروسيا وحزب الله والعصابة الفاشية التي تحكم سوريا كأي قوات احتلال أجنبية تنتهك سلام وأمن شعب عريق حضاري. وأخيرا أتوجه بالتحية والإكبار لشعبي السوري العظيم على صموده وثباته وتضحياته الجسام، وأقول لكم نحن على ثقة أن النصر حليفنا، فاصبروا وصابروا إن الله معنا وأحرار العالم معنا. عاشت سوريا، المجد والخلود للشهداء والشفاء للجرحى والحرية للأسرى والعودة للنازحين، وإنها لثورة حتى الانتصار. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Free Iran! Thank you. Thank you, the free people of Iran, for organizing this event. Thank you, New York, for hosting this event. And thank you, America, for giving us the platform for free speech and expression so that we can take part of this event. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Assad must go. Ho, ho, Assad must go. Hey, ho, ho, Assad must go. Assad must go. We share with our friend, the free people of Iran, the same hope and aspiration. We both want freedom and democracy. We have the same enemy in two different countries. The enemy of freedom, the enemy of democracy, the enemy of the rule of law and justice. And we will defeat this enemy. As the Iranian regime has supported Assad, the killer, and given the tools and the weapon to kill, and participate in the killing by sending his soldiers and their proxy Hezbollah to Syria. We will defeat this enemy. And we will prevail. We will prevail! We will prevail! Syria and Iran will be free! Mark my words! Syria and Iran will be free! We will liberate Syria from the Assad regime and the terrorists and the thugs! Syria will be free, democratic, pluralistic and inclusive for all Syria. History in our side. We are the good guys. They are the bad guys and the evildoers, and we will prevail. Syria, free, free Syria, free, free Syria, free, free Syria. The Assad regime is the first regime to be on the terrorist list on the State Department, 1979. The Iranian regime was the second, 1984. The Marine attack in 1983 was claimed the life of 240 servicemen, was conducted by Hezbollah of the Iranian regime. And so was the attack on the Israeli embassy was carried out on March 1992. This is the new axis of evil. Hezbollah, Assad and Iran, the new cancer of the Middle East. And if we remove the cancer, Middle East will be healthy, peaceful, prosperous, where all the countries will work together to advance their people in a peaceful and friendly environment. Free, free Syria, free, free Iran. We will never forget the Twin Tower here in New York City in September 11. We will never forget the chemical attack on civilian on Ghouta, Syria, August 21st of this year. We will never forget the massacre in Camp Ashraf, September 1st this year. Free Syrians are for freedom and anti-terrorism, whatever is coming from Assad or any other extremists in the region. Free, free Syria! Free, free Iran! There's no deals with the criminal. There's no deals with the criminal. There's only justice. We want justice for all those innocent children who died in the chemical attack. We want justice for the 7 million people who's homeless now. We want a justice for the 120,000 people died, lost their life. We want a justice for the woman who gets raped and for the kids who get sodomized and tortured. We want a justice for the recent massacre in Camp Ashraf. Because we believe in justice and we will prevail because we are the good guys and they are the bad and evil guys. Free, free Syria! Free, free! The Syrian people, including children, are not only killed by chemical weapons, but they're killed by all the weapons. Although it's a big step forward to remove the chemical weapon, but the international community and the world leaders have an obligation to protect the civilians of Syria against Assad atrocity and Assad killing machine. الشعب يريد أداء الشعب. الشعب يريد We demand the removal of Assad terrorist regime as soon as possible. We demand that the international community under the UN to protect the civilian in Syria under R2P responsibility to protect. Free, free Syria! Free, free Iran! Thank you, free Iranian, for this nice
It is my honor and pleasure to be here in front of you, addressing you, giving my back to the UN, and talking right away to you. It is time for the righteous people to prevail. It is the time for good people to say their word. Syrian people were not killed only by chemical weapons. Chemical weapons killed only 2%, whereas 120,000 people were killed by other weapons. What so-called free world and United Nations was sleeping and turning their face to the other side, just to be on the other side of history. And you will be on the right side of history. It is time to wake up and to have a pressure on your public officials. Taking away the chemical weapons does not solve the problem, because leaving the baby killer there will continue to use other weapons to kill Syrian people. And Mr. Obama, is this your new styles of tampering with the promises? When dealing with the American people and the world, do you think this attitude will add any value to your character? I don't think so. The man who's going to stay in the White House, he better represent us, and he better represent all the American people, not to disappoint them. Mr. Obama, what would you like to say? Mr. Obama, what would you like to say to the families, victims, whom they thought that you will stand beside them and take their side and stop the killer from killing more? You betrayed them. United Nations betrayed them. instead you're stretching your hand to Iran, the Iranian regime, the fascist regime, the dictatorship, which is spreading problems all over the world and in the region. I would like to send a message to all the politicians and those who are lawmakers to be sure that American people are still leaders. They are still leaders in imposing our American values and ethics established by our valued principle in the U.S. Constitution. Mr. President, please do not underestimate those who voted for you and don't disappoint them. Thank you.
درود بر شما میهن پرستان، فرزندان راستین ستارخان و دکتر مصدق. درود بر شما که در این 30 سال کوتاه نیامدید و صدای مظلومیت ملتی بزرگ رو به دنیا رسوندید. به نام ایران، به نام آزادی، هم میهنان گرامی، امروز ما در مجاور سازمان ملل متحد جمع شده ایم تا یک بار دیگر جهانیان را نسبت به خطر رژیم فاشیسم مذهبی آخوند حاکم بر ایران آگاه کنیم. این رژیم 35 سال است وحشیانه ترین سرکوب‌ها را علیه مردم ایران اعمال می کند. کشور ما و کل خاور میانه را به سمت جنگ و نیستی می برد. 35 سال پیش آخوندهای بی فرهنگ با قصد انقلاب ضد سلطنتی مردم ایران را به گروگان گرفتند. از آن زمان مقاومت مردم ایران علیه این رژیم ارتجاعی شروع شد و مردم ایران تحت رهبری آقای مسعود رجوی و با تکیه بر سازمان مجاهدین خلق ایران و با آگاهی به اینکه حکومت خمینی جانی و خودخواه با دیدگاه‌های بسیار ارتجاعی بر پایه ولایت مطلقه فقیه مملکت ایران را به قهقرا خواهد برد و نام و فرهنگ غنی ایران را نابود ساخته و صلح و ثبات منطقه و جهان را به خطر خواهد انداخت. گرد هم آمدند. آقای رجوی با تشکیل شورای ملی مقاومت ایران یک مقاومت پایدار علیه این رژیم ضد ایرانی و ضد بشری را پایه‌ریزی کرد. از 30 خرداد 1360 که آخوندهای جنایتکار سرکوب خونین مردم ایران را تمام عیار شروع کردند تا امروز 120,000 نفر از فرزندان ایران به شهادت رسیدند. فقط در سال 67 بیش از 30,000 زندانی سیاسی را که خیلی از آنها میبایست آزاد میشدند توسط آخوندهای جانی قتل عام شدند. طی دوران حکومت سیاه آخوندی بیشتر از 500 عمل تروریستی در خارج از ایران توسط این رژیم صورت گرفته است و این تروریسم که لازمه بقای این حکومت فاشیستی است به سیاست جاری این رژیم تبدیل شده است و روزانه در سوریه و عراق و افغانستان قربانی میگیرد. متاسفانه طی این سالهای سیاهی که بر مردم ایران گذشته است، سازمان ملل در مقابل جنایت این رژیم فقط به صدور محکومیت اکتفا کرده و هیچ اقدام عملی صورت نداده است و همین امر جانیان حاکم بر ایران را در کشتار و سرکوب و تروریسمشان جری‌تر ساخته است. بیعملی سازمان ملل همراه با سیاست مماشات کشورهای غربی با رژیم آخوندی فقط باعث کشتار بیشتر مردم ایران و مردم منطقه شده است. هم میهنان گرامی، همکنون سازمان ملل متحد میزبان آخوندی جنایتکار به نام روحانی است که سالها در آدم کشی و ترور و مسلح کردن فاشیسم دینی ایران به سلاح اتمی از ارکان اصلی رژیم آخوندی بوده است و در تمامی جنایت‌های این رژیم عامل و شریک جرم بوده است. سوال ما این است: چرا سازمان ملل متحد وظیفه اصلیش حفظ صلح جهانی است باید از چنین جنایتکاری استقبال کند؟ چرا رؤسای کشورها باید با چنین جنایتکاری دست بدهند؟ این مایه شرم تک تک آنهایی است که با او دست میدهند و یا به سخنان او گوش میکنند. او هیچ فرقی با خامنه‌ای جانی و سلفش پاسدار احمدی نژاد که به حق مورد نفرت مردم دنیا بوده است ندارد. حضور چنین جنایتکارانی در سازمان ملل متحد فقط باعث می شود اعتبار این سازمان جهانی از بین برود. هم میهنان عزیز، متاسفانه یکی از قربانیان اصلی این سیاست مماشات با آخوندهای جانی مقاومت مردم ایران بوده است. تحت این سیاست آخوند پسند مجاهدین مقیم اشرف که تنها هدفشان سرنگونی نظام جور و جهل آخوندی بوده خلع الصلاح شد. آمریکا که عامل این خلع الصلاح بوده در چارچوب کنوانسیون 4 ژنو رسما مسئولیت حفاظت آنها را پذیرفت، ولی آمریکا از سال 2009 تا کنون در بیش از 5 بار حمله و هجوم تروریستی توسط دولت نوری مالکی که تحت حمایت آمریکا ولی مزدور و آلت دست رژیم جنایتکار آخوندی است به تعهدش در مقابل اشرفی ها عمل نکرده است. طی این حملات 112 نفر به شهادت رسیدند و این بیعملی آمریکا نوری مالکی جنایتکار و آخوندها را در جنایاتشان جری‌تر کرده است و هر بار بیشتر از قبل به ابعاد جنایتشان می‌افزاید. حمله دهم شهریور نیروهای ویژه نوری مالکی هم محصول این سکوت و بیعملی بوده. این حمله منجر به شهادت 52 نفر بی سلاح و گروگان گرفتن 7 تن از اشرفیان که 6 تن آنها زن بودند شد. به این عکس توجه کنید که چگونه جانیان تحت فرمان مالکی و آخوندها و خواهران و برادران ما را روی تخت کلینیک تیر خلاص زدم. چقدر دیدن این صحنه ها دردناک است. چقدر قلب هر انسانی را به درد می آورد. ما امروز جمع شدیم که خطاب به همه دولت مردانی که در این ساختمان جمع شده‌اند بگوییم بی‌عملی تا کی؟ چرا با این جانیان مماشات می‌کنید؟ چرا اجازه می‌دهید حق مقدس مردم ایران برای آزاد زیستن به این شکل پایمال شود؟ چرا اجازه می‌دهید حق مقدس پناهندگی زیر چشم خودتان اینطور لگدمال شود؟ آخوند جانی و دست نشانده های آنها در عراق چی می‌کنند؟ چرا تلاش نمی‌کنید گروگان‌های بی‌دفاع اشرفی ما، این خواهران و برادران مظلوم ما از دست این جانیان خلاص شود؟ همکنون مجاهدین مقیم زندان لیبرتی در اعتراض به این بی‌عملی و اعتراض به عدم اقدام آمریکا و سازمان ملل متحد در مقابل تهدید جدی، در مقابل کشتارهای مجدد دست به اعتصاب غذا زدند. چرا آنها را رسیدن به محل امنی در کشورهای آمریکا و اروپا حمایت نمی‌کنید؟ بسیاری از هموطنانمان در همبستگی با آنها به این اعتصاب غذا پیوستند. جان این اعتصابیون در خطر است و مسئولش آمریکا و سازمان ملل متحد است که باید هرچه زودتر به خواستهای آنها رسیدگی شود. اجتماع امروز ما برای دنبال کردن خواست همین مجاهدین و مبارزین است. سازمان ملل متحد و آمریکا به تعهدشان عمل نکردند. آمریکا در مورد حفاظت تک تک اشرفی‌های مقیم زندان لیبرتی مسئول است. یونامی در مورد حفاظت تک تک حفاظت اشرفی‌های مقیم لیبرتی مسئول است. اتحادیه اروپا کاملا میتواند کمک‌هایش را به عراق مشروط به دست برداشتن این همه کشتار و نقض حقوق بشر کند. ما مردم صلح دوست و آزادی خواه ایران به رهبری مسعود و مریم رجوی تا آخرین نفس برای آزادی ایران و ایرانی میستیم. همچنان که در 35 سال گذشته ایستادگی کردیم و مماشات و کشتار نه تنها ما را از راه من منحرف نکرد، تازه میبینید که بعد از کشتار مظلومانه اشرفی ها و به گروگان گرفتن آنها همه اشرف نشانها اشرفی شدند. اشرفی ها در بسیاری کشورها با اعتصاب غذا و اکسونهای خود به خونخواهی خواهران و برادران شهیدشان برخاستند. من هم افتخار می کنم که با سربلندی بگویم که خودم را یک اشرفی می دانم که تا داد این شهیدان را نستانم از پای نیستم. و درود بر تک تک اشرفی های مقیم زندان لیبرتی و شما که در این محل جمع شده اید. درود بر شما.
My brothers and sisters, and make no mistake, we are all brothers and sisters. I
I am honored to speak to you today. I was just asked just a little bit ago while sitting down, so I'm speaking from my heart, not from any notes. But I stand with my fellow clergy, Christian clergy, and actually one came all the way from Holland, so it's not just the United States. It's throughout the world. And we want you to know that we could not stand straighter or stronger with you in solidarity. I don't know how it could be possible. As Senator Torselli said, instead of breaking our backs, what the mullahs have done with their terrorism and their murder and their slaughter is to strengthen our spines and strengthen our resolve. I am amazed as I get to know my brothers and sisters who are Muslim, how much we have in common. I knew it from learning, but learning becomes knowing when you meet face to face. We have more in common than we have difference. And we are all called to stand together, to work together, to be angels in tennis shoes and dress shoes and high heels and flip-flops and sandals, to do the work that the MEK has begun. I look at the MEK, the people of liberty, the people who are working throughout the world, the NCRI, as being kingdom builders. A kingdom is what God wants us to co-create with God. A place where we all love each other, care for each other, stand up for each other, and will not put up with oppression and terrorism and bullies and murderers. Now, I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of people who call themselves religious, whether they're Christian or Muslim or some other faith, who are nothing but extremists who have greed and power-mongering in their hearts. And I'm not putting up with it anymore. What about you? No more saying that they're Muslim, no more saying that they're Christian. If we are not really doing what God calls us to do, which is to love one another, to take care of one another, to help one another get our feet up, and to make sure that we can all live with peace, with freedom, with equality, then we're not doing the work of God. So I thank you. People always thank us for being involved, but we thank you. You are a blessing to us. You've brought us into your family. Thank you. No, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to turn the podium over to one of my brother clergy who also is going to speak to you.
Greetings, my brothers and sisters. I stand before you this afternoon representing over 1,000 clergies in the United States of America who are fully committed to this cause, and many clergy brothers and sisters throughout the world. We stand here to let you know today that we are doing more than just praying for you, but we have become actively involved in the cause, in the movement, for we all are created by God. Because we all are created equal by God, the creator of all, we stand here today letting you know that we stand with you from this day until this matter has been resolved. We will not give up. We will not stop. We will continue to pursue liberty and justice for all. And for the 52 pictures and people that you see that was murdered on September 1st, we stand with the families. And those 7 who are now hostage, we want you to know as we stand together as a nation, as we stand together as a people, they too shall be free. They too shall have liberty. They too shall be back with their families.
So as we stand together here today, please let it be from your heart to our heart. We stand united for the same common cause, freedom and justice to all. God bless you and may God keep you. For we shall overcome. We shall overcome. God bless you.
Thank you.